Good to have you with us on this Wednesday edition. Ed Schultz News and Commentary from the nation's capital. 1 week from tomorrow night, going to be in Fargo, North Dakota at the Fargo Theater. It's going to be an interesting political discussion, left and right, and I'm bringing in journalists and panelists from all over the country to talk about this election cycle. It's an election town hall 2016. If you're in the neighborhood, it's free. It's open to the public. It is a ticketed event. You can go to Tickets 300 and get registered to join us. That's Thursday night, October 6th in Fargo. All right. Have you had enough of the post-debate analysis? Nobody comes up with any ideas to make it better. I think I've got a couple. First of all, I'm sick and tired of hearing about whether the moderator did a good job or a bad job. Maybe we shouldn't have a moderator, number one. Number two, why don't we allow, in this age of high-tech stuff, to let the debate evolve into a high-tech kind of situation? For instance, maybe if there would be a computer screen in front of each one of the candidates, and they would, as approved by the election debating commission or whoever these people are, if they would be allowed to have maybe 3 or 4 selected sound bites that they have chosen, that they think their opponent is lying or off base or whatever, and don't let the other opponent know what your 4 selected sound bites are, and you get to play them. And then you can force the response from your opponent. Instead of all of this mindless freaking fact-checking that is going on. I think CNN is lying. I mean, have you ever thought about that? Maybe the fact-checkers are lying. I mean, look, if somebody says something, then at least if it's played by an opponent, they can not only play it, but they can call you out on it, and they can give their analysis of it and correct you right there. But it's this old-style debate stuff. Come on, it's 2016. We're doing debates the exact same way we did them 50 years ago. And I just feel like, you know, can we move the dime a little bit? Can we allow each candidate to have a little bit of, ooh, here's an old term, maybe some audio in visual. Maybe they can play some just audio. Maybe they could just go with the audio of what somebody said, or maybe graphic out what was said on a tweet. Now, the other night, Hillary pointed out that Donald Trump said that climate change was all about where it started with China, and that's what Trump had said, and he denied it. Well, clearly there was a tweet where he had put that out. See, that would have been great. And it would have been, we could have seen Trump's face get really, really red because he would have had to explain what was actually on a tweet and in print. But instead, we have to turn the channel somewhere else and rely on some fact checker and find out if that really happened. So I will declare this the Ed debate. This is how it should be done. And I've come up with this. I haven't heard anybody suggest anything on how the debates could be improved. Take the moderator out of it, take the fact checkers out of it, make sure that we know that the candidates know what they're talking about, or they would not use the tape. Obviously, if they use the tape, they're going to counter it. And they're going to counter it, then the opponent is going to have to sit there and say, well, actually what I really meant, or I wasn't lying, and then you at home, you and I can decide whether they're full of shit or not. I mean, it's so good. I guess it's too complicated. All right, so John Warner, the former senator who I actually thought had passed away, he hadn't been in the news for a long time, and I guess I hadn't thought about him for a long time, but he is an old, established Republican from Virginia, served 30 years in the United States Senate. If the name rings a bell, yes, he was at one time married to the deceased Elizabeth Taylor. John Warner had a very close relationship with the military and many of the brass throughout his years. He was kind of the Pentagon's go-to guy when it came to funding and issues in the United States Senate. They could always count on John Warner. He is a Republican. He's like an old Bob Dole Republican. He is throwing his support behind Hillary Clinton.
That individual that is best qualified to lead this nation, and first and foremost, to have a very firm and fundamental understanding about how this nation developed, how we got to where we are, how we became the leader of the world, and what our responsibilities are to maintain peace and freedom, not just for us, but for much of the world. And that cannot be learned overnight. You don't pull up a quick text like National Security for Dummies. That book hadn't been published.
John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation, joins us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. John, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Ed.
I don't know if this is going to shift any votes, but it certainly is a voice of credibility for Hillary Clinton, isn't it? What do you think?
Very much. And, you know, it's an interesting thing. I've covered John Warner over the years. He is an old man now. He's 89. But he is something that we still have a few of around. He's a World War II veteran. And then went on to serve as Secretary of the Navy, did a lot of other things. And what I've been noting recently is that a number of these World War II veterans are stepping up and writing op-eds, speaking out. You know who Roger Angel is?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he's a great sports writer. He writes about sports. That's, you know, from New York or other places. But he wrote an essay. I think he said, I hope I've got it right, that this is his 18th presidential election that he's voting in. And he recalled voting for Roosevelt while serving in the Pacific during World War II. And he just laid into Trump. And what I think is interesting, and where it may be valid, in fact, where I might even put a few of these folks up on television, as old as they are, is folks who really are hardwired into these great big questions of what America does in the world, how America responds to huge threats and huge challenges, seem to have big questions about Trump.
Yeah, they really do.
Trump doesn't come off well for them.
No. You know, who won, who didn't win, I don't know. And I don't know if anybody's going to be moved by this debate. All I know is I got two more, and it's going to be another show again. Say, John, I want to talk to you right now about some news that's unfolding on Capitol Hill. There's been a presidential override, a veto override, and it's the 9/11 bill that now will allow families of victims to go sue those in Saudi Arabia who were connected to the attacks of 9/11. The House has voted to override the president's veto, and of course that was just hours after the Senate did it. The Obama administration had somewhat of a terse response to all of this, and they're trying to wrap up their business so they can go home for the election, and this would close out the session of the Congress. But this bill would allow 9/11 victims' families to sue Saudi Arabia over the alleged support for the terrorists who carried out the attacks. Your thoughts on Obama's thinking to, number one, veto it, and then I guess your thoughts also on why they're doing it. Are they afraid to go home to the commercial in a campaign saying so-and-so congressman didn't support the families of 9/11 victims? I mean, what's the dynamic here, John?
Well, I think the dynamic is exactly what it seems on the page, what it seems in what the president has said and what his critics have said. The president is trying to deal with global politics and with global challenges. Saudi Arabia is, to my mind, a very troublesome ally. But it is an ally in a region of the world where the U.S. is trying to achieve all sorts of ends, and they're very difficult. The president's trying to say, you know, look, you open up this can of worms, and you have a lot of problems that develop from it. I understand what the president's saying. By the same token, if I was in Congress, I would have voted for this bill. And I wouldn't have just voted for this bill because it's to be politically popular. I also think that families of 9/11 victims and folks who are concerned about these issues have raised real questions about the Saudi role in all of this. Not conspiracy theories, none of the, like claims about things that want to believe happened or whatever. These are practical questions about whether one of our allies has shielded folks who knew about things, who did things that brought one of the greatest horrors to America in our lifetime. And so I think, look, here's the reality of it. Some issues can be dealt with on the geopolitical level, on the, diplomacy level. Some issues go to the courts.
Yeah.
We have people to this day who are in the courts trying to track down property, trying to get to the heart of the matter with things that happened in World War II.
Here's what I think there's a real there's a parallel here. President Obama did not come to a status forces agreement to keep troops in Iraq because he didn't want international governance over our troops. In other words, if our guys in Iraq got into a firefight, that if the Iraqis didn't like it, they could haul our servicemen into court and prosecute them. What's the parallel here? Is the thinking consistent with President Obama as you see it?
Well, I think it is probably. The president is looking at the blowback on something like this. And the U.S. alliance with Saudi Arabia is at times a tenuous one. It's rooted in a lot of economics. It's rooted in a lot of politics and a lot of hard push and pull in that region. And again, I would suggest they are a very troublesome ally. They involve themselves in places and do things that, frankly, are not parallel always to what the U.S. wants.
Sure.
But because they're such a powerful force in the region,
and they buy military hardware from us, so we can't
tons of it.
We can't kick a customer in the teeth. I guess that's how the old American way.
I'm not sure that's a good idea though, because I will tell you. Look, I think that there's a lot of arguments for a reset as regards our alliances in the Middle East and how we relate to countries like Saudi Arabia and frankly countries like Turkey, which are, there's certainly, in the case of Saudi Arabia, it's not exactly like a thriving liberal democracy, and their interests may parallel ours at times, but boy, I'm not sure that at the end of the day they help us to get to anywhere near the kind of goals that we would seek to achieve.
Yeah.
So I know people get offended here, and on all sides, and people push and pull. But at a fundamental level, I just think that people who have suffered tremendous loss and have not been satisfied by what they've heard so far and by the responses to it have at least some right to pursue issues in the courts.
John Nichols, I'm looking forward to having you on board on October 6th in good old Fargo, North Dakota, the Fargo Theater, part of our political town hall, my friend.
I think Fargo is where it's going to be at least on that night.
Well, we're going to have you and Ruth Conniff. We're also going to have Ian Walters from the American Conservative Union. We got Congressman Kevin Kramer. We got a regional talk show host in Joel Heidkamp, and we've also got Lionel coming in, and we also have Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. So we're going to have quite the panel discussion for a couple of hours. I'm looking forward to it.
You're not going to get a word in edgewise.
I'm just the moderator. You guys got to carry it.
You're going to be like our good moderator on Monday night.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think the first question, since we're going down that road for a second here. Well, I'm surprised that the question didn't come up. Neither one of you have the trust of the American people. What can you do to reverse that, or why should you be president? I mean, that'd be a great question.
Yeah. Look, I'll tell you, there's another question that I guess this one would have been a little rougher on one of the candidates. I thought a great first question to Trump would have been, how come you and your people seem to be so upset by the idea of fact checking?
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, do you like my idea of having the candidates pick their own sound bites and their opponent doesn't know what it is if they think they got them in a gotcha?
I think the only problem I've got with it, I think it's better than what we've got. I'm no big fan of our current debates. The only problem I've got with it is that then the next step will be like holograms and things like that.
Well,
there's no end to it.
We got to get the program better. I mean, come on.
Well, I'll give you
I think the fact checkers are lying.
Well, how about this for variation?
Yeah.
You know what a president really has to deal with?
Yeah.
Not their memory of facts. What a president has to do is make incredibly hard decisions at very, very difficult moments.
Yeah.
Right? And it would be fascinating, and I doubt they'd ever submit to it, but it would be fascinating to put them in scenarios and have them have to deal with things as information comes their way.
Yeah.
Right? You've got this global challenge. Well, we know this, we know that, and see how they respond to it.
Cool.
Because that would really be the test.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think they'd jump for that one.
John Nichols, Washington correspondent of the Nation, here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Thanks, buddy. We'll see you. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure, my friend.
This is President Obama on a radio show this morning going after Donald Trump for this dust-up that he had with a former Miss Universe and some of the disparaging language that Trump has used for this woman.
You had somebody who basically insulted women and then doubled down, I think, this morning in terms of how he talks about them and talks about their weight and talks about how they look instead of the content of their character and their capabilities, which is not something that I want. Not somebody I want in the Oval Office.
That was on Steve Harvey's radio show. In another radio interview, Eric Trump said it took courage for his father, Donald Trump, not to go after Bill Clinton during the debate.
And I think people saw that he could restrain himself. I mean, it would have been very easy for him to take the bait, especially when that last question where they asked about sexism and other things. I mean, he very well could have looked down, and he said it when he came off the debate stage. I wasn't going to respond to that question because I saw Chelsea in the front row, and I just wasn't going to go there out of respect for her. I mean, he really took the high ground where he had the opportunity to go very, very low, and I'm proud of him for doing that. I mean, I'm really proud of him for doing that, and I think a lot of people recognize that. I mean, there were a lot of people who came up to me, including many in the media, who said, listen, he could have just crushed her on that last question. You would have probably hurt a family if you did, and I don't know. I think that took a lot of courage in so many regards.
Okay, so the question is Donald Trump going to have courage in debate number 2 and number 3 because he said he was going to be much more aggressive the next time around? Let me tell you something. If he wants the White House, he's going to go low, and then we'll be able to make a decision. Ed Schultz News and Commentary brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. We're back tomorrow.